Is this the only drum warm-up you need? Is it time to throw away everything else you've been doing and embrace a new direction? Of course I'm being slightly cheeky and controversial, but I do think we've possibly, maybe, discovered a better way. If you're the right player in the right situation. Today I'm going to show you the brand new way I've been warming up that's been helping me lock in some changes I recently made to my left hand and why I think it's better than anything else I've tried. And if you bear with me for a few minutes, I think you'll see even if this technique is a little harder to learn, you'll get way better gains with it. And you'll feel like you've accomplished more after a half hour of drumming. And hopefully you'll have more fun. I'm Nate, this is the 80/20 Drummer, and let's get started. Let's first talk about the whole reason we warm up. A valid reason is literally to get our hands warm, especially if you're in the northern hemisphere right now, when the days are getting colder and you're not 19 years old anymore. A second reason is to reassure ourselves psychologically, like, hey, our hands still work. This reason, I think, is a little bit of a crutch, provided you're not making any changes to your technique. But the third reason is the one we're going to talk about today. You're actually trying to make a change to your technique, and you want to lock it in before you unleash your stuff at full speed and full volume to avoid reverting back to old habits. Recently, I made a big change to how I was playing with my left hand. More about that in this video. But very long story short, I used to hold the stick farther out in the fingers, and recently I adjusted so that it's more in line with my forearm, which gives the advantage of way more range of motion with the fingers without needing to revert to French. If you watch a lot of modern players, they have this technique. Anyway, all of this is to say, I'm in a bit of transition and I want to make sure I'm locking in the new way of playing instead of falling back into old habits. Which makes this perfect for you if you're trying to improve your weak hand. And again, if you want my specific advice on that, click the card here. But now let's go on to talk about what we want to warm up to do for us, and why I think this new way is way better than anything I was doing before. I want to warm up to do two specific things for me. And if you're thinking you need to take notes, you don't, because if you click the link below the player, we'll send you a free study guide. First, I want to locate the feeling of what the new hand technique feels like when it's working. Second, I want to maintain that feeling through more and more realistic challenges. That way it's like I'm wallpapering my bedroom with new wallpaper, except it's a new hand technique. For you at home, it's the same. Rather than putting you through some arbitrary paces, you want to warm up to help you locate the feeling of your technique working ASAP. Then to carry that feeling into more and more real-world scenarios. That way when you're just playing, you don't have to think about it. You've already put in a ton of reps. Should we get to it? Warm-up 1, paradiddle partials. We'll do it first and then explain it. And by the way, all these warm-ups will be transcribed for you in the same study guide you can get for free by clicking the link below the player. Here's the first phase of my warm-up. I'm just alternating doubles, triples, and inverted paradiddles with my lead hand on the hats and my weak hand on the snare, and filling in the gaps sometimes with a kick drum. For you more advanced types, the important thing is actually to improvise with this concept because you're chasing the feeling in your weak hand. For you folks who are close to the beginning of your journey, here's a simplified version you can just copy verbatim. The feeling we're trying to locate is the hinge. Essentially, it's what happens when you do a double really slowly. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, much more detail at this card. As I perform the hinge motion, I'm searching for the right feeling in my hand. I want the stick in contact with the middle finger the entire time, and I want to feel like I'm maintaining and controlling the energy well with the middle finger. Additionally, I want a neutral wrist angle and a nice relaxed fulcrum. If I feel like I'm pinching excessively, I'll adjust things until I feel more balanced. The great thing about this is you can use this locate the feeling concept for whatever you're working on, whether it's a grip or control with your fingers, etc. It's at this point you might be wondering, why not just do stick control or something? And by the way, for everybody who thinks I'm constantly throwing stick control under the bus, it's a great book, it's just not applicable for everything. Anyway, my friends, we will get there. But first, let's finish this first chapter of Give them something to take away immediately. If that hinging double is the first aspect of the feeling I'm chasing, the second is smooth singles. That's why once I have my left hand feeling nice with the paradiddle partials, I'll start to incorporate some singles like this in what I think is probably an inverted quadruple paradiddle. The idea here, as I said, is to start incorporating some strings of singles. Again, for the more advanced folks, the point is to improvise with it a bit. For beginners, I'll give you a specific thing you can copy. We're about to explain a lot more about how and why this works, but first, one more aspect of the feeling I want to capture: rim shots. When I do a rim shot, I want to feel a smooth pull through the middle finger, causing a nice snap on the rim shot without having to use a ton of wrist or arm yet. That's why I'll alternate those paradiddle partials with some snap rim shots. Again, beginner version here is slow, and transcription at the link below the player. One interesting thing. Once I started doing this warm-up, I started noticing it everywhere. Here's Davidson, who goes by Dimension on Instagram, doing something very similar. Later in the video, I actually talk to Calvin and get his thoughts, so stay tuned for that. But first, stay tuned for what this is doing for us and why I think this is maybe, possibly, the last warm-up you'll ever need. Let's say you're working on some aspect of your technique. How are you going to know if it's working right? Are you going to look in the mirror or down at your hands constantly? At first maybe, but after a few days, you want to relate when everything's working right to a feeling. That's the best way to get technique improvement out of your head, but still have a way to check if you're going in the right direction or just regressing back to old habits. That's why in this warm-up, we defined 3 parameters. We look first for the feeling doing that hinge thing with those paradiddle partials. Then we look for the second aspect with singles with those extended diddles. And finally, we look for the third aspect, with how the rim shots should feel. It's like geolocating ourselves. If it feels good and the output sounds good, that's the signal we're in the sweet spot. That's warmer. That's the go signal. Contrast that with the older way. If you're playing a prescribed step-by-step warm-up, it's giving you some of those things a technique must do, like doubles and singles, but it's not adapted around locating the feeling as efficiently. Unless you get lucky and it is. In other words, old way. Start from a prescribed warm-up, and if you happen to get the right feeling incidentally, good. New way, go directly to that feeling and build the warm-up around that. And in about a minute, I'll show you the most important part of the warm-up, which, this sounds clickbaity, but it's true. If you skip that part, you're probably only getting 20% of the benefit. But first, yes, I know, open loop. Take the journey with me, take the ride. Ready for a deep nerd alert? Let's put a countdown on the screen. You can skip past this part if you want, but this is for the true fans. I'm going to break down why I think this is so powerful. Here we go. AlphaGo and AlphaZero. Go is a game like chess, but much more complex. So some computer programmers tried to write code for a Go player that could beat the best human player. After years of tinkering with the code, they finally succeeded. That was AlphaGo. For the sequel, and you can fact check me on this, they didn't write any top-down code for how to actually play Go. They just gave the program millions of real-life games and tons of simulations to allow it to reverse engineer how to play the game from those. It's a useful metaphor. Oh, I should say, AlphaZero beat the pants off of AlphaGo. That's the entire point of this. Anyway, sometimes the quickest way to learn something is AlphaGo. That's like a teacher telling you, hold the stick in this part of the hand, use your wrist like this. Sometimes though, the quickest way to learn is AlphaZero. That's more like finding a training scenario that will tell you warm or cold, and just playing with it until you get more and more warms. Instead of intellectualizing it, you skip to embodying it immediately. And that's the really nerdy reason I like this warm-up. Okay, nerd alert over. So second part of the warm-up, the part where we really wring some of those gains. Now that we've established the feeling, we want to challenge it in a number of real-world scenarios. First example, 3-note groups between the floor tom and the rack tom. Notice how I start from those home bass licks, then transition to those 3-note groups up and down the toms. Slow, literal version for beginners. Why are we doing this? Because singles around the toms changes the rebound of the stick and the orientation of the grip, and also imposes lateral forces on the stick as you move them side to side. It's an easy place to fall back into your old habits if you're not careful. Here's what's important. I get the feeling, then I try to maintain the feeling in the new lick. If I lose the feeling, I come back to the home base lick to find it again. Gradually, we maintain the feeling for longer and longer, which I think what Calvin was on. Before you go, I want to give you guys the real black pill on this warm-up and why I think it blows away anything else out there. But first, let's talk to Calvin. Super quick intro to Calvin. He's the Instagrammer who makes these hilarious videos chopping out to famous songs, with captions like, "Ringo wasted an opportunity to play 30-second notes here." But he looked like he was on something similar with a video he posted the other week.
So I guess it initially came from Mario Duplantier as a drummer or as an influence. It's actually a lick from the song "Born for One Thing." So it's the doom to doom to doom 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 to doom. I guess that it was a pattern that he played I really liked, and then I thought if I can just get that as fast as I can, then that's something I can do, especially with metal music and growing up with metal music. This need to maybe play and push what I think is my limit as often as I can. And if I can play it at that speed and that intensity, then surely I can play it at a lower intensity at maybe a slightly lower speed, but still have that control.
Now, here's the upshift of this lesson. The Tim and Eric head exploding meme. You don't need to copy anything I'm doing, literally. You can just take the concepts. Here we go. Step 1. Translate a new technique or a proper technique into a feeling in a very controlled environment like the pad. Step 2. Figure out 1 to 3 things that help you find your way back to that feeling on the drum kit. Step 3. Build your basic warm-up around flowing dynamically among those 1 to 3 things. Finally, step 4, once you find the feeling, challenge it by doing other real-world things on the drums. That's it. That's how you get the gig. And folks, this is another abstract one. This is another risk. I'm happy you joined me on this journey. Hopefully you'll find it useful. And just a reminder that if you'd like the free study guide, complete with all the transcriptions of the beginner versions of the exercises, you have only to click the link below the player and tell us where to send it on the next page. It's free. Dude, it's been real. Always enjoy these. See you again real soon in another lesson of the week. Yeah, don't do that. Grip it loose, but not that loose, you guys.